Welcome, golfers, to the next episode of the Read It, Roll It, Hole It podcast. Today, we are joined by Fred Shoemaker. Welcome, Fred.
Thank you, Ollie. It's good to be here.
Thank you so much for joining. I'm really looking forward to our conversation today. You are the owner of Extraordinary Golf. You're an author of some books. You've just informed me you've been a coach, not a teacher, which we might talk about, for 47 years. I'm super excited to talk about, to talk through your life and your career and what you've learned, and hopefully pass on some wisdom to our listeners today.
That's terrific. I mean, just to know that I'm not very good as an entertainer. So if you're coming for entertainment or snappy stories, I'm not so good at that. I am very fascinated in learning, and I have a certain curiosity about how people develop. So just to know with people what we're in for, and then I'm not going to tell stories about Tiger or Ernie, but there might be something else there that could be interesting.
I've been following you for a few years now, Fred, and there is a lot of wisdom in there over that 47 years. I think you've gained a lot of knowledge over those years, and the things you say sort of really relate to me, which we'll definitely go into some detail on today. So I think we'll start, Fred, if you could just give us a bit of a background to, well, what have you been up to for the last 47 years?
Yeah, it's very interesting. So there was a mentor and a friend of mine back in the 1970s, a fellow named Tim Galway. And he wrote books called Inner Game of Tennis, Inner Game of Golf, which were my experience, were way ahead of their time. And he asked me some questions back then. And one of the questions he said, are you interested in a life of endless boredom or endless fascination? And obviously, I said, fascination, endless interest. And I've been doing some golf lessons up to that point. He said, well, how's it going, really? And I said, well, the truth is, it's kind of boring. I'm saying pretty much the same thing to about the same people, and the usual things are happening. And he said, well, maybe you have a purpose in life, and that's to make this endlessly fascinating. And he said, go get them, see how you can do that. And that was it. So basically, life has just bounced from fascination to fascination. As you said, I've been doing this now 47 years, and I can hardly wait to go to the golf course this afternoon to keep learning. So I don't ever feel like I have a job. It's almost like we get a chance to explore together. And I find human beings the most fascinating subject I've ever heard of. And I find the mind and us to be this amazing sense of wonder and awe in how we learn and who we are, and how we reform new perspectives, and how we develop new possibilities and self-trust and ability to be present, all those sorts of things. So the physical aspect of how a body moves to get a piece of polyurethane into a hole in a few shots as possible, that's been well documented. But there are other aspects that go on, and I love that aspect too. But there are other aspects that seem to be more interesting to me. So we have done 1,300 golf schools, about 55,000 golf lessons. We've done workshops for corporations on learning how to learn. We've done continuous learning for NASA. We've been involved in coaching workshops for Pfizer. We've been involved in distinguishing teamwork with Oracle and Apple. So there's lots of people usually think, oh, golf and business, well, golf is just a boondoggle. It's something you do after business. But we're really looking at, golf is actually a marvelous training tool, because people say, well, golf's a metaphor for life. If a person cheats in the golf course, they're probably cheating life. Well, the truth is, it's not metaphorical at all. It actually is life. It's who you are. You bring yourself to the golf course exactly as you would be in life. I mean, if you're an angry person, of course you'll be angry in golf. The question now is, do you want to look? Do you want to make a difference? So in my sense, it's a fabulous crucible to make a difference in a person, whatever they choose to. So possibly when they leave the golf course, they're a much better citizen. They're much better with their family. They have a greater capacity to live and enjoy and play full out in life from what they've learned in golf. And in my experience, it makes golf, it elevates it a little bit beyond just a sport. See, mostly our educators and our teachers have confined it to getting good at the sport, as if that's all that's going on. There's a lot more going on than that. I mean, suppose that parents and kids could develop quality time on golf courses, that they can make quality time at home because they learn how to do it. Suppose people could learn how to learn, so that when they leave the golf course, they're better in school, they're better in, listening to a symphony, anything that you want. So that's been mostly the fascination. All the other stuff that goes along with it is great too, but so that's pretty much it. And I find that I love to be at the edge of learning. I love to be at the edge where I'm kind of scared each day, a little bit like scared, excited, rather than going in and repeating some formula that I did a year ago or something. So I hope that makes sense, Ollie, but that's what I got so far.
Yeah, like Fred, that was superb to hear that. And yeah, it's just sort of making my head spin just hearing you talk in a good way, with millions and one questions. So yeah, it's great. The outlook you have on life is pretty special, I would suggest. And hearing you talk about humans the way you do is very unique.
Ali, I read something the other day where 20% of women, more than the number of women who are talking about their deceased husbands having interacted with them is up by 20% recently. So that either means, well, was it happening before and women weren't talking about it? Or, this is going to sound crazy, or were men from the great beyond, their husbands who've passed, not talking to them? Or were men not talking, men were talking, women were hearing, but they weren't communicating about it. So my whole point now is that we can have conversations now that we couldn't have 20 years ago. We know more and we see more. And those same things were happening 20 years ago, but we couldn't have that kind of depth of conversation. At least we didn't. And I'm interested in uncommon conversations. The kind that you said kind of make our heads swirl and knock our socks to the ground. And it's more than just how do I produce a backswing on plane and produce solid contact and be able to curve a ball the way I want it. There's more to it than that. There's more to human beings than that. So I appreciate the opportunity, and I appreciate the fact that you're in that vein also and looking at that, because it's just more interesting, that's all.
Certainly is. It certainly is. One thing that caught my eye on your website was the quotes from Darren Clarke and Paul McGinley. And I've sort of felt this from listening to you and reading about you, that Darren Clarke mentioned how he grew up on the links and it was all feel-based, and you're the first person who's properly related to that feel-based. And Paul McGinley said you really understood his soul. Don't quote me on that. I've just got that one word soul written down, but he talked about how you got him in the soul. So, and I've sort of thought that your work is almost, when I hear you talk, it's almost dreamy. I don't know if you can relate to that, because you will listen to yourself very different to how we listen to you. But you almost get me in this Zen or meditation sort of mindset. I'm just interested to hear your perspective on how you manage to connect with people so deeply.
I don't know exactly, but I'll just talk about some things. You see, when we go to school, schools are like temples to the mind, and the teachers are like a high priest. So we end up pretty much in our head. And most people use their bodies just to carry their head around. We're always thinking and worrying and drama and hoping and wishing and wish we had said this and not done that and gone there and got a better job and this, all that stuff. And then when someone may ask you, would you consider being here, present? You know, the basic whole thing of this is that only awareness develops you. I mean, awareness is the capacity to experience the world through your senses. That's all it is.
Say that again.
So, awareness, the capacity to experience the world through your senses.
Awareness is the capacity. Say that again.
To experience the world through your senses. It's not understanding. It's not conceptualizing. It's not information. In the world I live in, those are the booby prize. Everybody wants understanding. As if I could understand it, I could just do it. Well, I mean, I've had many PGA workshops. I start out the workshop, and does anybody here know how to swing a golf club? I don't think anyone does, including me. Do we have a problem with that? And of course, people spend their lives in the belief that they know how to swing a club. And the word how means I'm coming back to Darren and Paul, but in a roundabout way. The word how means by what manner or means. So people are saying, I know by what manner or means to swing a golf club. And the truth is, no one knows. No one knows how an impulse crosses a synapse in your brain to give the impression of movement. I don't know how I move my hand. I can do it. I'll gladly share my experience. So we live in this understanding is the major desire. Information is incredibly important. I'm not putting those things down. But there's something about a direct experience in the moment that really changes a life. There's a moment of learning in which the concept becomes real, when you actually experience the club face throughout your swing. And that moment changes everything. And when you actually have the experience, it changes your view of the future, and the wave also rolls into the past. So when Darren Clarke was playing, when he was young, he was probably more present in those rounds of golf, less in his head, just the capacity to play golf there. And I've never had anyone say, I was really present and had a bad day. It's just not possible. And when Paul McKinley talks a little bit about the soul of the game, I think he's talking about the ability to actually be in the moment of what he's doing, where there isn't a story about an outcome. There isn't a story about what people will say or how it'll be known. It's just the golfing that's there. You, a ball, club, and a target. And in that moment, there's a certain beauty to it all. See, when you watch TV, they talk about what it would mean to Tiger's legacy or the rookie, or how they would, get, being able to stay on tour. So it's all about melodrama and building things up. So we keep our noses in front of a piece of plastic for 4 hours and find it, whatever we find it. But the real thing that I think people love is the ability to be out there and finding there's no other place in the world you'd rather be. That there's an experiential assurance of what's going on, and the sense of how the club feels in your hand and the breeze on the side of your face. And being with your friends, but not having the whole story about who's winning and who's losing. And when you have those moments, when you're really there, it's almost like it resets life. When I was younger, they had something called an etch-a-sketch. You'd scribble on it, and then you'd pull the sheet and it would turn back to blank again. There have to be those moments in which you reset your life. And some people find it through meditation. Some people find it through a good conversation. Some people find it through artwork. Some people find it by a walk and a sunset. But there are some people who find that through golf. It's almost like, in a weird way, having a peak experience. And people say, oh, golf, are you kidding? A peak experience is when you have a child, or you go to the third world, or a special Thanksgiving with your family. But no, you can really have that kind of experience in golf, in which when you're done, it's almost like you've been to a great play and the curtain closes down and you just want to stop and talk to your mate about, wow, what an experience that was. And I think my experience, even though people have that for little bits of time, some more than others, that's why people play. And I've heard those stories, most people shyly saying that, man, it was just an unbelievable experience. You see, you've heard people say, I can't play without a bet. I like betting. And they think that the bet is the thing they love. But what really happens when people bet and put themselves under pressure, for once in their life, they are more present. You see, it isn't the under pressure they love, it's the focus they love. And when you get that kind of focus, when you're really present, which a lot of players have on the back nine of a tournament, you love it like a drug, like the great kind of a drug. And if a person realizes they can have that without part of the tournament, without the bet, they are the author of their own presence, if you will, then that's a nice thing to discover. I can have that by myself in the evening. I can have that playing with my wife. I can have that playing with my buddies, or I can have that playing in a tournament. It's more challenging to turn, I'll grant you that. Because people get in the tournament and they start thinking about the future a lot, and how they'll be seen, and the need for approval, which seems like all of us have, goes through the roof. And we seem to play for that. So I'm not sure exactly what the guys meant with those quotes, but I can see that when one is present in golf, more than they are for the rest of their life, they will play golf. When someone's in the game of golf and more in their head through thinking and worrying and drama, they'll eventually quit and find something to do. And that to me is the trim tab, the deciding factor why some play and some don't.
Fascinating, Fred. What's really interesting is during that conversation, you took me to somewhere in my childhood when I played golf. And it was on the 9th hole at Penrose Golf Club, which is where I played as a kid. And I was playing on my own, 9 holes, just after school, and the sun was setting. I think it was a winter time, and the sun was setting. And I got into the 9th hole, and the 9th hole is a par 4 with the sea behind, and the sun was setting on the sea. Anyway, so you've got to sort of lay up short of the water with back in the day, I was using a Big Bertha forward. Remember it well. And I remember thinking the sun was that low, I'm not going to be able to see where this ball goes. Not a chance. So I'm going to have to really just trust myself to where this is going to go. And I always remember thinking, well, just put a good swing on it or whatever it was. And I hit this ball sweet as a nut. And I didn't look up. I knew exactly where it was. And it was the most beautiful golf shot I've ever hit. And I remember walking up the fairway slowly, not even looking to see where the ball is. I knew where it was. There was a 100-yard marker, and I knew it was going to be by it in the middle of the fairway. And I just trundled up there. And by the time I got there was the ball sat 2 yards away from this 100-yard marker. And I don't know why I'm sharing that story with you, but that's just where you took me. And it's interesting how, because of the low sun, I had to fully trust myself. I couldn't see where it was going to go. Yes. I had to trust it. And do you know what? I can't actually recall having that amount of trust over a golf ball, perhaps that often. But,
yes, well, see, Ali, we need times like that to see what's possible for ourselves, even though it doesn't happen that often. It's like building a beautiful building that's completely self-contained. In other words, it does solar, it does recycling water. It may be expensive now, but it's an example of the future of what could be. And that's what you had, that golf could possibly be like that. And it pulls you forward to that future in small ways. And that piece, I'd like to talk just for a little bit about trust, okay?
Yeah.
See, most people want confidence. And I have no interest in a person having confidence. Confidence is, I've had success in the past, and if I think I keep doing exactly what I'm doing, I'll have success in the future. That's like having an engine in your garage and you know you can put it together. Okay?
Mhm.
So trust is very different than that. Because as soon as you miss hit with confidence, confidence gets shattered. And you go back to a formula and the formula doesn't work. Trust is like knowing that you can put together any engine because you just get it, how it all works. See, trust is elemental. And most people don't know how to practice it. How do I practice trust? See, trust means, see, even back then, you had built up enough awareness that you could feel what was actually happening. Without seeing a ball, you could know where it went. See, most of the time, you're in your head hoping and worrying, thinking about, and even when you see the ball in the sky, it takes away your feel. For once in your life, you were probably saying, I am choosing to be 100% in my feel of this because that's what I need at this shot. And that's what trust is. Trust is irreplaceable, but it becomes because you have built up enough sensitivity to get what actually is happening. See, in the 1990s, let's say we did 400 golf schools. And in that time, a lot of it was about letting go to targets, freedom to targets, really a sense of how a shot can be shaped and all the joy and freedom. And I thought that was just the basic great thing to do because of the distinctions of golf, freedom and letting go are a huge thing, and having a target create your form, so to speak. So they were nice. They did a lot of nice things. But I noticed that people first developed right away and then flattened out. So it's began to shift because we realized if it's just about a target, people are almost disembodied. You don't sense how their bodies are moving, or where their feet are, or where their hands are, or how they're turning. So it gets to be almost like too much out there and not enough in here with me. So we took a major shift after 1990s and had people starting to really feel what their body is doing before going to targets, before letting go of targets. I mean, even in putting, you can have people look at a target and putt, and almost everybody experiences freedom and letting go. And they've done that by hundreds. But yet, if the club face is open, the putts are going to miss to the right all the time. and also, it's just so the capacity to experience your own body and the club face and your ability where you're pointing and those things before you go to a target was a major shift. Having people be at home for a while. See, most people don't experience what their body is doing. We are so much caught up in our heads, as I said earlier, we don't really experience what the body is doing. So the game became more and more for self-coaching. Self-coaching is the capacity to realize reality by yourself, to experience it. And people say, well, you can't trust feel, feel and real are different, No, they're not after a while. After a while, you can actually get to reality. It maybe takes you time to slow down. Maybe it takes you a sense of saying at half speed for a while, but you can pick it up. Just very few people stay in there long enough. I mean, they don't say about your feet, when you can't feel your, I mean, if I put Novocaine in my feet, no one's going to teach me how to dance. I don't care what information I have or what great dance instructor I have. I have to be able to experience my feet, the reality of them. So some of the things that we take for granted automatically, like feeling isn't real, or they always put together getting better at golf and being happier. Those are always two things that go together. And every commercial is get better, and every golf professional is trying to get people better. My experience, people getting better at golf does not necessarily make them happier for any length of time. It doesn't. And we've just accepted that fact. I mean, you can't become happy by a thing, you can only be happy. If the thing that made you happy will start to go away, which it always does, now you become unhappy again. So, see, I maybe told this story in another podcast. I'm going to go into it again. I'll make it quick, but it's something like the people we call our teachers in golf are generally really good-hearted men and women. But what they do is they are usually the better player in their secondary schools, and they're usually the better player in their universities. Then they realize generally their game is not quite tour quality, but they love golf and they hope they can just keep practicing or stay around golf and something might happen to boost their game a bit. But when they were young and dreaming about their lives, they didn't dream. They were dreaming about playing on the Open or the Masters or those kind of things. Very few people who you call your teachers ever dream between the ages of 10 and 20 that they'd be standing on the back of the range with Mr. Wilson, helping him get the ball up in the air so he can play in the member guest. That's not the overriding dream of a golf professional. So, we can't go on with all sorts of things here, but one of the things I'd like to say is the context is more important than the content. The context of the situation, it's how you're perceiving it, it's the filter through which you see it. We all perceive the world through different contexts. Because you have been born where you are, you have culture, heritage, family, media, you see the world differently than I do. Neither of us sees reality, we only see through our context. So a golf professional, when they go up to give a lesson, usually it starts out that the pro says, why don't you give a chipping lesson to the kids or a putting lesson to the ladies, and he likes it. So eventually they get into the program and do the things they do and study the things they study and become a golf professional in the PGA. So what the context is behind it when they go into give a golf lesson is their lives ride on a sea of what they couldn't be, their dream of playing in the Masters or something. Then these are all, and this is true for most professions in life, by the way. And so when they go to a lesson, it's like they're trying to get everybody to be better, to be good. Because the thing is, they've experienced in their subconscious or in their quiet moments, if I had gotten better, it would have all worked out for me. I would have been able to reach my dream. So subsequently, the only thing possible with someone else to see them is if they get better, they'll be happier. So there's this mania to get everyone better and better at golf. And because that context it brings out some things, getting good, getting better. It's all the workshops are about that, nothing wrong with that. But it obscures some things. It could obscure some things like learning how to overcome obstacles with grace and ease. How to be a great playing partner for a person. How to find joy in the game. Because a lot of times we're not going to play well. And you mean the art is to play poorly and still be extremely happy. It's possible. And so 100 other things that a golf professional could be teaching, they aren't able to do because it's so much about getting better. And so there are some golf professionals who realize that there's a different fork in the road. And that fork could be that golf could be so much richer for people than just the desire to get better. And I've talked about some of the things. Suppose you could learn how to learn how to be present, learn how to handle a breakdown with a lot of equanimity. You could really distinguish what the source of excellence is. I mean, all those sorts of things. But you can't get there. It's all about just getting better in the game. So one of the things, the challenge, the basic tenets of anything, is the purpose of golf to be good at it? Ollie, if you get good at golf, it's not going to do you any good. You're not going to be a better citizen. It won't help your bank account because if you shoot 2 shots lower. It won't help your relationships. See, the payoff of getting better is never as good as the promise. If it was really true that getting better is everything, then the golf professionals would be the happiest people in the world because they're really good. But that's not true. mean, I've known enough golf professionals you have, and they're no happier than a 20 handicap.
Mm.
So sometimes you just have to look at, what are we actually doing with our lives? What makes life worth living? Why are we doing this? Why would a human being go and spend 5 hours to and from the course of their life? Hours, the precious thing in the world is time. Why would you spend 5 hours, and what benefit are you getting from it? And one of the things about coaching could be to lay out the possible benefits one could get, so they have choices about things like that. So I'm going to go on and on about this. See, can I go a little further? Would that be disruptive? Let's go a little bit more into this. Is that all right?
Please, yeah, please do. I absolutely love what you're talking about, Fred. It's superb.
So you and I and almost everyone lives our lives inside a certain box. And it's what the things we think of and the things we experience, they all come from that. And so when we go for a golf lesson or anything, we want, give me a new version of what's inside my box. And whenever we hear something that's outside of it, we just consider it as nonsense. And so, what really makes the greatest difference is to think the unthinkable, to get outside of a box, outside of the paradigm, outside of the worldview. And when you really have that, one of the things we're talking about is that getting better is not the source of happiness in golf, which really gets people kind of crazy when you hear that. See, and when you really see, there are only 3 things that ever change people. Transform people. I've been in this business now for 47 years. I don't have lots of conclusions, but this could be a tentative one. First thing, accidents. You can figure out that if someone has an accident in life, their life changes like that. The second thing is nature. Look what happened with COVID. Life has changed dramatically for all of us, or a hurricane or something. And the third one is a new worldview, a new paradigm, a new point of view. That's the only thing I've ever seen makes a difference. Not new thoughts inside of your box. People are trying to be the smartest person inside of their box. And I'm saying that, okay, to step outside of it, to be able to be a person who, see, this is challenging, but let's go at it. So what's the most amazing thing in life? People would say, well, it's the invention of fire, or urbanization, or the invention of being able to read books for something. People have all these great things of what the most important thing is like. And I don't agree with that at all. The most important and exciting thing I've ever seen is the ability to create your own life. The ability, instead of adopting your parents' point of view or your culture's point of view, is to be able to say, you know what, this is who I am. And I've seen people do it in golf. The guy just wrote me the other day, he says, who I am is creativity and freedom. I'm giving up trying to be really good and show other people and to get other people's approval. What I play for is to leverage my athletic talents in creativity and freedom, because that's what I love. Now, this guy has gone from a 17 handicap at age 50 down to a 1.
Unbelievable.
And I can assure you, he's played his whole life up to age 50. And it is not because of the coaching. It is because of who he is. He has decided to create his own life versus just adopt the cultural norm. And you can see that it's possible for anyone to do that. I realize you want to find out how to do that in work. It's so simple. Work is, for most people, work is about getting a promotion or doing less work or being getting more money or something. But work really transformed for me when I really got my own purpose for it. And it's so simple. Find out what is wanted and needed and simply produce it. That's all. Find out what's wanted and needed and produce it. And you'll find that when you do that, your life matters. It makes a difference. You count. When someone walks up in front of you in a lesson, you get to say, what do you really, really want? Knowing they really count too, and they can make a difference. Instead of saying, take a few swings, bro, and I'll tell you what you think you need. It's a different context. And I find it deeply satisfying, but it's very challenging to have people get what they really want. What they usually do is they repeat what society says you want. I mean, the first time I ever did that was with Tim Galway back in 1976. I got my first lesson with him, and he says, what do you want? I said, I want to be the best I can be. I want to reach my potential. He says, you sound like an advertisement. You ever thought of it? And I hadn't. I just repeat. I was a parrot for society.
Yeah.
And so we all are to some degree. So anyway, I love the fact that we can look at the basic foundation of anything and take a look, is that really true? Because the basic foundation of golf revolves around, if you get better, you'll be happier. In my experience, that's not true. For a moment you are. It's like when you get a new car, you're happy about the car. And then after a while, it just becomes a car.
Yeah.
You got to worry about it and wash it more and take better care of it. It becomes annoying. So.
That's great. The guy who was the 50-year-old 17-1, what did you work on with him to help him get to that standard?
Well, first of all, is developing critical awarenesses of things that are useful to him. Where's your club face? Where's your swing plane? Okay, well, what produces solid contact? Finding it for himself and finding his own instincts. See, a method, by the name of method itself, since all human beings are different, cannot be good for two people.
Sure.
So therefore, it means that each person, when you say to golf pro, each person is unique and they have their own unique way. Everybody says yes. But how many people actually say, I have no idea how you're supposed to swing. But together, I think you can discover something that fits you. And if you're allowed it to fit you, you can go to a golf course with less in your head to remember. You don't have to remember how to walk, how to eat, something. You don't stab a fork into your lips. You have your own way of doing things. But most people think, I don't want to be myself. I suck. I want to be somebody else. And one of the things is to have people realize that if there is a secret to golf, and there is, and because everybody talks about it, it seems almost like a cliche. But the secret is you already are something. You already have something. Let's bring it out. And if you want consistency, in my experience, that's the best way to get at it. So this fellow found a swing that fit his body. Okay. And then he found himself in the terms of saying, what do I really want for my game? Now he's past midlife. And is it just about trying to manipulate other people's opinion of you so you get approval all the time? Is that all it's about? So he began to look at, what do I really want? And he really wanted to be a creative golfer. Starting the ball over the right corner of the sand trap, hooking it 15 yards. Cutting a wedge in there so it comes in softly with a fade. And he wanted freedom. Freedom, not just physical freedom, but freedom from the attachments that we think we have to hold on to in order to survive our self-image or our self-concept. Looking good, not being embarrassed. What will others say about me? What would happen if we had freedom from that? If you didn't live your life being afraid of the opinion of other people, be independent of what other people think, what you think other people are thinking of you. And that's what he did.
Amazing.
And of course, see, he created his being first, and then his doing came from that. Being first and then doing. And it was just, you don't see people have that kind of development after they play that long. And all his friends who he plays with, there's a golf course around here called Ruby Hill, all this people he played with his whole life wondered what the hell happened to him.
Amazing story.
And there's a number of people like that. See, there's another big subject. I don't know how much time you want to do with this, but there's a big subject that I also worked with him. He worked with himself on. This idea of I work with him. You can do the same thing to 5 people and one person takes it on and 4 don't. So it really doesn't have a lot to do with the coach, it has everything to do with the student.
Totally agree.
So another thing is that, how will I say this? When people ask about performance, in some way you're a performance coach, you could say that.
Sure.
So what is the source of performance? Where does it come from? And that's what this man and I looked at extensively, and a lot of other people together we have. So performance is only a function of action. And action is the only thing that matters. I don't care what people hope or want or wish for or commit to. It's how they act, period. Action's where the rubber meets the road. And the next question is, if performance is a function of action, what is the action of function? Where do actions spring from? Now, this is another one of those counterintuitive things, out of the box thinking, that will seem like nonsense to you, but it's nonetheless true, okay? It's not true because I say so, it's true because everything in neuroscience experiments in the last 10 years has proven it to be true. And that is, right now when you're sitting there, Ali, you're having an internal experience. The experience could have moods in it, it could have thoughts in it, it could have body sensations. There's an internal experience going on with you. One may be more prominent than others, but at any given time, but they're all happening. If you were to look at it for any length of time, you could say, oh yeah, I feel this way, I'm thinking this way. Your internal experience has nothing to do with how you're going to act in life, which is, for most people, it's like bizarre. But at one time they thought the sun was going across the sky. We now know it's not. We're revolving. So what does that mean, my internal experience? I mean, you think if I'm confident, be confident, you will act confidently. And if you're afraid, you'll act with fear. So that's true, but they do not cause each other. Your internal experience and your actions show up together, but they are not the source. So you got to get to what the source of action is. Where does it come from? And that, in my experience, is the foundation of a performance coach. Unless they get that, they can't call themselves that. Most people are trying to change people's attitudes or get them to try to make sure they swing a certain way or something. That, in my experience, it doesn't make much difference. It gets a lot of cachet, but it doesn't make much difference. So where does it come from? And I'm going to make this quick, but it's something we could talk about for the next 3 hours. And that your internal experience is totally a function of the way you perceive the outer world, how it occurs to you, and the way you perceive yourself. If you perceive yourself as not good enough, you will eventually live out not good enough. If you perceive yourself as not that good a player in sand, you will initiate the fear that you worry about. If you perceive yourself as unstoppable, you will eventually be unstoppable. If the first hole looks to you a little bit scary because of the sand traps, there's no way you will ever swing freely. It controls your facial expressions, your body sensations, everything. So, okay, now this is a tough conversation, but it's worth having, I think. Performance is a function of action is a function of how the world occurs. And the world occurs different from all of us. It's all made up. We're in a 24/7 illusion because you are a Caucasian man of a certain age, living in a certain country, having a certain income and a certain profession. You see the world in a certain way. You have a fixed way of acting and being. I do too.
Yep.
I was in Japan a while back, and they look at a bunch of gravel and call it a rock garden. For me, I didn't see anything but a bunch of gravel. And they were going, oh my God, this is magnificent. Who knew? So if it's all perception and all made up, the people who function beautifully in life, who I have had a chance to be around quite a few of them, realize if I am making it up all the time, I'm going to make up a good one that works for me.
Wow.
So the people and cultures and nations transform by the habit of the words that they use.
Powerful.
This is challenging, but see, they speak differently. See, I could step to the first tee, and if I'm doing a golf school, my mind will say to me, if I mishit it, it's going to invalidate the work with the students right here. That's what my mind will say.
Yeah.
It's one interpretation. We work extensively with our coaches to realize all situations have multiple interpretations. How could I interpret it differently in language? One of the interpretations could be, I love to play. I love playing. Let me play. I love hitting a driver. Another interpretation could be, this is the challenge I love. This is what I'm here for. Another interpretation could be, I could hit it beautifully or I could mishit it, but I'm going to damn well feel what I'm doing while I'm doing it. So I'm going to be present in the shot. See, the art is to make an empowering interpretation of any situation and make it authentic. You get on the motorway when you leave your place here, and there's somebody cuts you off in traffic, jumps right ahead of you, slam on your brakes. It could be this guy is rude and a jerk, or it could be he's in a hurry to get to the hospital and get insulin to his mother. Possible, isn't it?
Sure.
So what this man did, he began to create for himself empowering interpretations, no matter what happened in life. He'd shoot an 84 in the tournament, which was high for him at this point. And he'd come in and he'd say, you know what? I hit 3 out of bounds. I'm not sure how I did it. I'd love to feel how I did it because that would be the greatest thing for me. Not the whole story of that and blah, blah, just that. Then, can I experience, coach, how I hit it out of bounds? And that's so, I'm in the middle of writing another book. The book could be this cool adventure, or it could be a big slog, a real drag. It's my choice. So I'm going to complete this now, which is something that we should be talking about for hours, because my experience is something that changes life the most, that performance is a function of action, period. Action is how the world is interpreted. And the world is interpreted by you and I, the very thing that makes us human, the very thing we all have, and that's language. When one changes their language authentically, they change the interpretation of the world, which changes their actions, which changes their performance. So everything can be interpreted in language, and it could be in an empowering way. So, the things that my mind barks about is wind and cold weather. Because like you, I stand on a driving range. So I decided to reinterpret these things, okay? Like wind, in a windy day, I'll say, listen, now I get to experience grit. I get to be stronger. I get to be tougher. Nothing's going to get me.
Yeah.
Just an interpret, rather than, oh my God, I got to spend 8 hours standing outside. Same thing with cold weather. Traffic's another one. What traffic, right? So I decided to reinterpret traffic. I always wanted to sit quietly for a while. This is my opportunity. So if you're listening, your listeners, if they realize we're making up the world all the time, and we have a default way of seeing it that comes from our families and our history and so forth. And there's a new way you can create it. And when you do, the world changes. And that's what I mean by a new point of view, a new worldview, a new paradigm. So that's a long yapping about that stuff, but it's useful. I find it makes life worth living.
That was absolutely superb, Fred. I think, I feel like I feel cleansed. I feel like I've been in meditation there with you. It's wonderful, wonderful to hear you speak. Just before you go, I'd just love to, I've got a couple of questions from some of my students who are fans of yours. And before you go, I'd like you just to mention about the books and where the listeners can find them. So the first question is from Jasan. So I want a quick answer from you on this. How do you practice freedom?
Okay, the access to freedom is through experiencing the interference. Begin to notice the thoughts that take you away. Begin to notice the body sensations that you have. Don't make them wrong, but experience them. See, you don't get, and another thing, you don't get freedom from something, from bad scores, from playing partners. There's got to be a purpose to your freedom for something. What are you for? What is it that your life, that you're willing to give your life and life energy to? See, It's not trying to get away from something. It's freedom towards something. So to me, it's like the more I experience the interference, like I get on the first tee and I could hear my mind say, like I said earlier, if I mishit it, I'm supposed to be the golf pro. I want what people to say. And I'll say, oh, I heard that. Thank you for sharing that. Now, what do I intend as an adult male? I'm letting it go here. See, you got to go through the eye of the needle to experience the interference. There's no way around it. You've got to get to it. The body sensations and the mental, stuff that comes up that allows for it. And don't make it wrong. Part of being human is interfering. But get to know it like a friend and then choose otherwise.
Brilliant. That's good. Good answer there for Jasan. Thank you. And Deborah's a big fan, and she's read your book and heard you talk about the triangle. There's a triangle you talk about.
Learning, performance, and enjoyment. Yes.
What she wants to know is how to keep in balance.
Yes. Well, she probably sees that the balance is all bent towards performance. When you walk off a golf course, everybody asks you, question do they ask you? Go ahead. Holly, what do they say? You walk off the golf course, they say,
how did you score? How did you play?
Have you ever walked off a golf course and had someone say to you, what did you learn today? So that I could learn with you and from you.
Love that.
You see, see, your name's Deborah, right? If Deborah would actually sit down with her little group of men or women she plays with, at the end of the day, while they're having a beer, and look at each other and say, what did we learn today about ourselves or about golf? In the beginning, I would say, I learned I suck. I 4-putt all the time. Well, what did you learn about that, about yourself? I've worked a lot with the First Tee. It's an organization of the kids here. And when the coach walks up to the kid coming off the golf course, they usually say, did you have a good time? But that's not the question that changes a life. The question that changes a life is not what did you score, but what did you learn? Your learning today is what changes tomorrow. And if you're not learning, I mean, growing your awareness of critical variables about yourself and about golf, you have no right ever to expect tomorrow to be different. Learning is the key to changing tomorrow. And so why aren't we talking about it? Why we just sit there and say, I had a bunch of good shots, but then I blew it up on number 8 when I had an 8. So yeah, the performance is heavily weighted towards, the triangle is heavily weighted towards performance, somewhat weighted toward did you have a good time, but almost nothing to learning. So the balance for her would be to start a learning conversation, either with herself or with others, and maybe connect with people who are as interested in that than you are, as you are. So that.
Brilliant. That's great. Fred, so where can the listeners, they're probably buzzing like I am, and I'm going to get your book to go into my library of books that I've got on the wall.
They're on Amazon. You can find them all that way, of course. And we have a video too out, a couple hours, and that might be an interesting thing too. Sure. But the most important thing that your listeners could walk away with is the questions for themselves. See, if your golf game or your life isn't working, your questions are too small. One of the things is, how can I make more putts? The next thing is, how can I learn how to learn? Another one is, how do I get rid of the grip of wanting to impress and get the approval of others that has on my life? I'm almost unable to breathe because I so want to please and do right and be good. How do I get rid of that? So there's levels of questions. And my sense is you just need a bigger question. What question, looking out of which, could make all the difference? And so that would be a good thing. And that was, the books are about that. I mean, I've been in conversations with, lots of people. Maybe approximately in golf schools, probably about 25,000 people, asking them, what did you really, really want? Why are you here? What possible human value can come to you by slugging golf balls on our 200-acre park? I know something about getting better. I got that. But what's the point? Why are you here? And when people can answer that honestly for themselves, they found a purpose in life. They found what that is. And that's a tricky one. To realize that the answer is just simply a reflected part of what society says, or have you actually gotten down to your own truth for yourself? You know, and that's a challenge.
That is. Fred, really, really appreciate your time. Thank you so much for coming on to the show and sharing your words of wisdom with us. I myself have got more questions than I've got when I first come, and I always think that's a sign of a good conversation. So I'm sure the listeners are the same. So thank you very much.
As we always say, to be continued.
Brilliant. Look forward to part 2.
All right, take care.
Thank you, Fred.